You're listening to Searching for More, a podcast of the Diocese of Arlington. With the November election only days away, join us to hear from Jeff Caruso, Executive Director of the Virginia Catholic Conference, on the responsibility we have to vote and how to prepare to do so.
So it's for very good reason that the Catechism says, to the fullest extent possible, citizens should take an active role in public life.
Today's host is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington. Let's jump right in.
Jeff, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Billy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we talk about you behind your back, as you know, on the Walk Humbly podcast a bit with Bishop, because anytime something public policy or General Assembly comes up, you're our guy, right? So as Executive Director of the Virginia Catholic Conference, we're pointing to your resources and your website quite a bit, especially when it comes to contact your legislators. So thank you for the work that you do. It's behind the scenes, but it's really critical, especially as of late. So
well, you can talk behind my back anytime it gets more sign-ups for our Virginia Catholic Conference network, which you've generated many of. So thank you.
Good. Well, I'm glad it's working. If it's not working, let me know and I'll leave you alone. But so you do a lot of work, like I said, behind the scenes. Before we kind of get into the main topic, talk about your background and how you came to work in public policy and the position that you're in.
So the Virginia Catholic Conference, of course, is the public policy office of Virginia's Catholic bishops in their two dioceses. And so I've been working at the Virginia Catholic Conference since it began in 2005. And prior to that, I was at the Maryland Catholic Conference for a little over 6 years. My background is as an attorney. So I did practice law for a couple years before stepping into the public policy lobbying space. Mm-hmm. And I've just really found a close connection with being able to use those advocacy skills in a way that amplifies church teaching and hopefully helps to promote the common good.
Yeah. When you were in law school, did you think you wanted to do public policy related stuff, or were you initially going down a different route?
I was initially studying to practice law. I think I didn't know very much about what a lobbyist does or what sorts of opportunities there were, and especially I didn't know of opportunities specifically in a church setting. But it was something that I learned over time as a young professional, and when those opportunities came around, it was something that I applied for and was very interested in.
Yeah, lobbyist kind of gets a bad rap. It's like a four-letter word. People say lobbyist, they're thinking you're taking them out for steak dinners and baseball games and buying them cars and stuff. But so talk about just kind of the nature of the work of a nonprofit lobbyist, like you are for the types of entities that you represent. You represent dioceses, specifically you represent the bishops. The pastoral voice of a bishop. What is the nature of that work like for you?
So we represent the two dioceses of Bishop Burbidge here at Arlington, Bishop Nest out in the Diocese of Richmond, primarily in state public policy matters. We get a little bit involved in federal matters too, in collaboration with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. And day to day, especially during the Virginia General Assembly session, we're testifying in front of committees, we're talking in one-on-one meetings with legislators. Sometimes that happens in their office. More often, it actually happens just walking with them, from the committee room to the State House or wherever we can find them and have even 30 seconds to a minute of their time to get in that final plug before they vote.
Right, and because it's an educational teaching role, right? It's helping. You have an expertise that they don't have. I mean, most of these folks are business owners or they're attorneys, in often cases, they're representing whatever part of the state that they come from. They don't necessarily know how a certain bill might affect our ability to conduct ministry, or they might not know how it'll affect the poor or, the average parishioner, or whoever it might be. And you're there to kind of teach them, here's what this means, good or bad, regardless of what it is. But it's kind of a teaching role. Is that right?
It is. It really is a form of evangelization. It's a very specific form of it where we're trying to give legislators the best sense of something before they vote on something that's going to affect a lot of lives and affect the common good. So I think by and large they look to lobbyists as experts in their areas, and hopefully we help inform them before the votes take place.
Yeah, it's better to do it beforehand, right? Afterward, it's kind of a little too late at that point. But you also have a relationship building role too. I mean, that's a lot of what you do, especially in the quote unquote off season. You're there establishing relationships, helping them understand what the Virginia Catholic Conference does, but what our bishops care about. Our bishops are different people with different needs in their respective dioceses, but there is a lot of overlap, and you're able to build relationships to know, yes, this person has voted a certain way, whether that's the way we want to or not, but some of the factors as to why, and you can talk to them along those lines. How important is it to have those relationships with both the legislators themselves, but also their staffs?
The relationships are absolutely essential. I find it's always helpful to do the relationship building first.
Right.
And then, because we're talking about some very serious, very sensitive issues, in some cases very controversial issues, the way that the legislators look at them. So it's always helpful to be able to have that conversation first, get to know you and try to see what areas we have in common. And then it makes those more difficult conversations much more doable. And whether a legislator ultimately goes our way or not, it just gives us that entree to be able to have those more difficult conversations.
It's a very Catholic way to go about it, frankly, right? I mean, we start with relationship. Pope Francis talks about encounter, and he talks about accompaniment, right? And so, a legislator might have voted 100% against the way we'd want him on a particular issue and even sensitive issues. But our job is not to demonize or to vilify. Our job is to accompany and hopefully along the way have some impact. That's why we do it differently than you'll see other lobbyists or political, groups operate, because we're Catholic. We have to operate that differently. Is that fulfilling for you both as a practicing Catholic, actually here in the Diocese of Arlington, your parishioner here, but is that fulfilling for you as a Catholic, but with, the background as an attorney and a public policy advocate?
Well, one of the unique privileges of working for the church and its legislative agenda is it really does cut across political categories. There are really, I think, few organizations out there that can really say that they're advocating for something that's a consistent moral framework that cuts across the political spectrum. It's not left or right. It's not conservative or liberal. We work on a variety of issues where either one party or another agrees or disagrees with us. And while that can be a challenge, certainly in many cases, it's also an opportunity because we can always find some area of agreement and then work from there. So I find that very helpful on a practical level, and then also a great privilege to know that we're amplifying a message that really kind of gets past these ideologies and gets right to the heart of Christ's message.
Yeah, and that's because we're founded on our principles first. We're not politically aligned in any way. It's not some strategy, right? It's just that our principles, will fall where they may with different political parties. But the fact that it's bipartisan, a lot of the things that we advocate, will be in one party or another. I would assume that also helps keep some doors open that otherwise might be closed. Like on issue A, okay, they're not with us on it, but on issue B, they might be more open to it. Does that help you maintain those relationships we were talking about?
It does, very much so. And in fact, I've had legislators tell me, that at least you're consistent. I had a legislator that didn't agree with us on either abortion or death penalty say, you know what, I've got to admit, you guys are consistent. You're coming here, talking about the sacredness of human life.
That's good. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So we've got a big election coming up here for us on November 2nd. Some people have already voted absentee, but we've got the election for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and all 100 members of the Virginia House of Delegates. Is that right?
That's correct.
Wow, that's big.
It doesn't get in terms of state government, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are disillusioned by the political process. I think the last, several years, but this has been building for a long time. People are, I think, distancing themselves from politics. How important is it that, well, they might not want to get into every political fight. How important is that they vote, though? Like for a Catholic who's grounded in the teachings of the church, how important is voting to their life? Or how much should it be?
In the Bible, in the letter of St. James, it says, be doers of the word and not hearers only. I usually start with that, and I think to myself, well, If we're going to be doers of the word, if we're going to love God and neighbor, that's through our actions. And that includes working for the common good and the life and dignity of our brothers and sisters in the human family. So it's for very good reason that the Catechism says, to the fullest extent possible, citizens should take an active role in public life. And in our Virginia Bishop's pre-election letter, which was issued a couple of weeks ago, they amplify that message, and they urge people to get involved in the political process. They say it is our sacred duty to form our consciences and vote.
Especially when the stakes are so high. I mean, there's so many issues on the ballot, essentially, right, in terms of abortion, ministry for the poor, religious freedom. These are like major issues that allow us to not just operate as a church and as Catholics in society, but also the very issue of life is on the ballot, time and time again. One thing Bishop Burbidge has reinforced on his podcast and just in speeches that he gives and homilies and so on, is the importance of forming our conscience. The word conscience, I think, is often misunderstood because we think of it as like how we feel about something. It's like, vote with your conscience doesn't mean vote how you feel, right? So talk about, what does it mean to form your conscience? What does that process look like, or what could it look like?
The U.S. bishops have issued a wonderful statement that's called Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, and people can access that and a lot of related resources at faithfulcitizenship.org, a full variety of USCCB resources. And in that Faithful Citizenship document, the bishops say that conscience is the voice of God resounding in the human heart. And they say that there are three basic elements of forming one's conscience. First of all, we have to study the church's teaching and sacred scripture. Second, we have to examine the facts and the background information. And then, of course, we have to pray. And then once we form our conscience properly, then we have to go ahead and follow it. And I guess one particular point that I like to think of in terms of prayer, too, is when we receive the Eucharist. That's a special way where we can draw especially near to the Lord. I would recommend the next time people receive the Eucharist, take that opportunity and ask the Lord for his help in forming our consciences before we make these important decisions, whether they be voting decisions or advocacy decisions or any big decision in life.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. When we look at the different issues, there's a lot of issues that take place in an election. You have put together a kind of a voter guide. Now, for a lot of political groups, that means vote for this man or woman, over that person, right? That's not the way we do it. So talk about the voter resources that the Virginia Catholic Conference has put together, and also how you put them together, because I think that the nature of what those are actually telling us is very important to this process of forming our consciences.
So to access our resources, go to vacatholic.org. You'll actually see a pop-up right on our homepage, and then you can click the link and go to the resources. And the resources are Bishop's pre-election letter that I referenced, and then also side-by-side comparisons of the candidates and their positions in the races for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. So key issues that are at stake. And the neat thing about those side-by-sides, and we've been doing them for a number of years, is that we're taking the candidates' own words and their own records and in an objective way putting them down on paper in a side-by-side comparison on a wide range of issues that reflect church teaching.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical. You're using their words so that we're not paraphrasing, we're not, summarizing for you what we think they actually think. We're just taking their words, and I have to say it's like the fairest way to go about it, in my opinion. And you're very, I think, appropriate in the selection of the quotes so that it's not trying to take something out of context. I think I'm sure it takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of conversation about, is this fairly representing the candidate's position? Is that a laborious process? Is it hard as it sounds, or is it not?
It takes countless hours to put those together. We have a staff of 4 people, and each person really dove in and went all in, and that's the only thing that made it possible.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine, because you're also imagining what your inbox is going to look like the minute that gets published if you don't present it as fairly as possible. I'm sure you get a lot of emails anyway, but You mentioned the Bishop Burbidge and Estout's pre-election letter. I think, one, it's a very good letter, but there's an issue that they really champion in that and call out specifically, because there are a lot of issues, but they call out the issue of respect for human life. Why do you think it is that they chose that issue and addressed it so directly?
Well, the bishops state very clearly in our letter that protecting all human life is a fundamental responsibility that we have, to protect the sacredness of all human life. And that's because the right to life is the most fundamental of all rights. If we don't have that right, we have no others. So if you look at it in practical terms, in the United States, since the Roe v. Wade decision, there have been over 62 million abortions. So for very good reason, as we point out in the letter, St. John Paul II has said that life must be defended with maximum determination. So the bishops echo that in their letter, and they say that when it comes to protecting life, we have to do so to the fullest extent possible, and that's of the utmost importance and needs to be our highest priority.
You know, I heard the statistic that we're averaging 800,000 abortions a year in the country, which is a staggering number. It's like hard to believe. But I thought of it in context. The Rwandan genocide, which we all know from the movie Hotel Rwanda and so on, is about that size. And I think to myself, imagine if we had a Rwandan genocide-sized catastrophe in our country every year. Every year. Would there be another political issue? Would any candidate talk about anything else, right? And so for us, the issue of abortion is so important because it is human life. And like you said, is there anything more fundamental? And I think because it's the silent voice in the womb, that it isn't the front and center political issue that, you know, that it should be. And it is staggering, but that's why I think that you're right. The bishops called that out themselves. This is the kind of the predicate for all other rights and responsibilities in life. And so that's kind of where that starts. Another question people have, because we see elections and the numbers are big, how many people vote or don't vote or whatever, does the vote count? I think for a lot of people, it's a practical issue. They intend to, and then the day of voting happens, and they're like, I'm running a little behind. If I hit Starbucks, I can probably still get to work on time. But it's voting day. And I think it's sometimes the last minute, it'll be fine. What is one vote? It's not. I'm not going to turn an election. Problem is, if enough thousands of people say the same thing and have that same dilemma, it does change elections. How important is the Catholic vote? But how important it is that we just take that last step and vote? Does it really make a difference?
Well, first of all, it always counts in God's eyes, as the bishops point out.
You stuck it hard there. You went to DEFCON
1. Get that Catholic vote going, or Catholic guilt going, I'm sorry.
Or both. That's so
yes,
true,
both.
Yeah.
Both. So yeah, I mean, in terms of our sacred duty to form our consciences and vote, regardless of whether we're casting the deciding vote or not, it's still our sacred duty. Also, we probably have the best example of all time here in Virginia of how close an election can be. We had a tie vote in 2017 in a House of Delegates race right here in Virginia. Wow. It was tied, and the winner was determined by literally drawing a name out of a bowl. So practically speaking, we just never know. We never know how close these are going to be. So it always matters, but practically speaking, sometimes we literally could be deciding the vote. We just don't know, and we do know that they're going to be very close this year. At least that's what the polls are projecting. So very important.
No, I think that that right hook you offered in the beginning is the starting point, though. And while we laugh about it, it's true. Like you said in the beginning, it's about being doers of the word. I think we have to think to ourselves, not just practically, because politics is sometimes seen as a practical game, and there is a lot of practical matters to it. But it's in essence, it's a matter of principle. Do I really believe these things? We have to ask ourselves that every time we choose, good or evil, or decide to, pray a rosary or not, or whatever it might be. It's like we have to just ask ourselves, like, do I really believe this? Do I really believe in the right to life? Do I really believe in the preferential option for the poor? Do I really believe in religious liberty? Well, you get a chance to make it very clear, at least to yourself, that this is a priority for me. This is who I am and the kind of person that I am. And voting is a reassurance for yourself. Yes, it sends the signal to God too, right? That like I'm with you, I'm on board. But I think it also is just a reinforcement for ourselves that we're in the fight. This is the battle of principalities, and we're invested in this personally. I think it's as reassuring for the individual as it is for the outcome of whatever the election might be. Even if it's going to be a landslide in a direction that you don't want after praying about it and so on, it's still worth making that decision and standing on principle for even just a moment, right? Yeah.
We're holding ourselves accountable, and we're holding our elected officials accountable.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, thank you for stepping out from behind the scenes to offer us kind of some perspective on both the job that you do, because again, we do talk about you. We talk about the work that you're doing. I think it's good for people to kind of get a sense of the man behind the VCC. I also know it's a very hard job, and your work is always continuing, but there are seasons where it is in just overdrive. And that's now. And you're also representing two bishops, and that I'm sure has its blessings and its challenges, and you're trying to represent them in an arena that is a hostile arena. But you do it very well. And I just know from working with you, you're one of the most well-meaning people I know. And you don't come at it with bias. You really come at it with the heart of service. And that shows not just in your own work, but the work of the VCC overall. So thank you very much for all that you do. And I encourage people to go to vacatholic.org and check out the resources, see what's going on there, but really help form your conscience, pray through this decision, and head to the ballot box on November 2nd. So, Jeff, thank you so much for everything.
Well, thank you, Billy. Thank you for the vital assistance that your office provides to us in countless ways. And again, go to vacatholic.org to check out our pre-election materials, and remember to pray, form your consciences, and vote.
Very good. Thanks.
You're listening to Searching for More. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, make sure you follow the Diocese and the Arlington Catholic Herald on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channels for regular videos that inspire, educate, and inform about the Catholic faith in our diocesan community.